Humanity had long since left Earth's cradle, venturing into the stars with a confidence only born of centuries of conquest and unshakable belief in their superiority. Space was theirs to tame, to mine, to claim. Every corner of the galaxy was a new frontier, a new chapter in the story of mankind's destiny. On the edge of this expanding empire, in a sector known only to a select few, Commander Reyna Vallis stood on the bridge of the Manticore, a vessel built for exploration and, when necessary, for war. The mission was supposed to be simple: survey a star system on the fringes of known space. There was an unknown planet, Virulon, now deemed uninhabitable by the Earth Federation, but still, its signal persisted. A strange melodic transmission like a requiem, calling from the heart of the desolate world. It was an anomaly. But anomalies were Reyna's specialty. Reyna was a soldier, a leader. But as the captain of the Manticore, she had come to view the universe not just as a battlefield but as a vast, unexplored canvas. She was a creature of duty, her mind always calculating the next move, the next challenge. And yet, there was something unsettling about Virulon, a deep, unsettling feeling that gnawed at her as she prepared her team for the mission. Her crew was a mix of humans and aliens, each with their own reasons for serving on a vessel of this nature. There was Lieutenant Nash, an ex-soldier who now served as the ship's tactical officer, his mind always sharp, always looking for threats. Then there was Drex, an alien from a species known as the Kyath, whose race had once almost wiped itself out in a war with another, and who had since turned toward peace and exploration. Despite the rough exterior of his species, Drex was an ally of rare conviction. And then, there was Mikhail Gregorov, the Manticore's second-in-command. A man of ice-cold calculation and impeccable loyalty, to Earth, to the Federation, and to the old order that now governed human society. But as Reyna had learned in the months they had served together, loyalty could be a dangerous thing. It was while they were nearing the system that the first hint of trouble appeared. A notification blinked on the command console. Reyna's eyes narrowed as she read the incoming message, a simple string of coordinates followed by a warning. Lunar Requiem armed. Stand by for impact. The warning came from Earth. Earth, the cradle of humanity's empire, the birthplace of their might, was now issuing threats, warnings not to interfere. Reyna's heart pounded in her chest, but she quickly pushed the emotion aside. She had a job to do. Yet even as she moved toward the bridge's main viewport, something caught her eye. An anomaly in the system's coordinates, a faint distortion in the very fabric of space. Her instincts screamed at her, an echo of every battle she had ever fought, every decision that had led her here. Lunar Requiem. It was a name Reyna had heard whispered in hushed circles, a myth to most, a weapon to others. The Earth Federation's most classified and most dangerous creation. A weapon so powerful it could wipe out an entire planet in a single cataclysmic strike. It was a precaution, a failsafe, for if humanity's dominance ever came under threat. And Reyna's gut told her something was terribly wrong. The ship's AI, Alera, broke the silence, her voice calm, almost detached. Commander Vallis, we are receiving an active signal from the Lunar Requiem platform. It is targeting Virulon. Estimated time of impact, 45 minutes. The hairs on the back of Reyna's neck stood up. She turned to Mikhail, who stood across from her, his expression unreadable. Explain, she commanded. Mikhail's lips curled into a tight smile, though his eyes betrayed no sign of relief. It's just protocol. Virulon is a dead world, Commander. The Federation decided it had no future, so they initiated the Requiem. The Requiem, a weapon so terrible that it was said to have wiped out entire civilizations in the past, remnants of ancient battles, remnants of human arrogance. But what did this mean for the survivors of Virulon? Were they just expendable? Reyna clenched her fists, the sharp edges of her knuckles pressing into her palms. We need to stop it. Now. Mikhail stepped forward, his voice more forceful. It's Out of our hands, Reyna. We don't have the authority to stop it. Earth already made the call, we're just here to observe. Reyna's gaze met Mikhail's, cold as ice. Her mind raced. She had served in countless battles, seen horrors beyond comprehension, but nothing in her experience could prepare her for the political rot at the heart of this mission. And yet, she knew one thing above all. If she didn't act now, millions of lives would be lost. Set course for Virulon, she ordered. Now. The ship's engines roared to life as the Manticore veered toward the doomed world, and Reyna could only feel the weight of the decision settle in her chest. In her hands was the future of not just her crew. The transmission was strange, an eerie, mournful melody like an ancient song of the dead. But it wasn't just a song. It was a complex code, layered beneath the music. A message. And the deeper they dug, the more Reyna felt the chill of foreboding. Crawl up her spine, it's a map, Nash murmured, awe and terror flickering in his eyes. A map to the heart of the planet. Reyna's mind raced. A map to where? To what? To the origin of the civilization that had once lived here? Or to something far worse? The storm outside intensified, and for a moment she wondered if it was somehow linked to the signal. Are we still tracking the weapon? She asked. Yes, Alara responded, her voice a calm presence amidst the mounting tension. It is on course. Impact in less than 20 minutes. Reyna clenched her jaw. Time was running out, but her curiosity, her gut instinct to understand, drove her forward. She couldn't ignore the message that had just appeared out of nowhere. No, there was something here. Something far beyond the simple destruction of Virulon. Something the Federation wasn't telling them. She turned to Mikhail, who stood across from her, eyes narrowed in calculated suspicion. You said it was just protocol, that Virulon was a dead world, Reyna said, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. But this doesn't feel like protocol. There's more here, Mikhail, and I intend to find out what it is. Mikhail's lips tightened into a thin line. I don't know what you're implying, Commander, but the Federation made its decision. We can't interfere with that. I don't care what the Federation says, Reyna shot back, her eyes fierce. The Federation doesn't control what happens on this ship, Mikhail. I do. His gaze faltered for the briefest moment, but only for an instant. Then, like the trained soldier he was, he steeled himself and nodded. I'll prepare a landing team, but we need to act fast. If that weapon strikes, nothing we do here will matter. Reyna didn't argue. The crew was already moving into action, and there was no time for second-guessing. The only question now was whether she was ready to uncover the terrible truth that lay waiting for them on the surface of Virulon. The Manticore touched down on Virulon's surface, its landing, gears scraping against the cracked, charred earth. The storm had begun to subside, but the planet was no less unnerving. The sky above them was still a maelstrom, swirling with violent, fiery gusts of wind and ash. But the ground, what they could see of it, was eerily still, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Reyna stepped onto the surface, the dry, ashen ground crunching beneath her boots. Drex, the Kyath, followed closely behind, his heightened senses alert as he scanned the area. Even Mikhail, normally stoic and unwavering, seemed on edge as he took in the desolate landscape. What do you think? Reyna asked him, her voice low. Something's wrong, he replied, his eyes scanning the horizon. There's no sign of life, no animals, no movement. It's like the entire planet's been abandoned, or wiped clean. Reyna nodded, her eyes searching for any clue that could explain the unsettling feeling she had. She had expected ruins, signs of an ancient civilization, but what she found was far more unsettling. It was as though something had intentionally erased every trace of life, like the very atmosphere had been altered to suppress any trace of organic existence. Commander, over here. Drex's voice rang out, sharp and clear through the heavy silence. He was standing near a partially buried structure, an ancient ruin, its walls etched with strange symbols that seemed to shimmer in the dim light of the stormy sky. Reyna made her way over, her eyes narrowing as she took in the structure. This was it, the source of the signal. The map had led them here. As she stepped closer, she noticed the symbols seemed familiar, almost like something she had seen in old Earth texts about the mysterious alien civilizations that had come before them. But these symbols, they were unlike anything humanity had encountered before. They were geometric, precise, yet alive, shifting and evolving in ways that defied logic. "This is it," Reyna said, her voice tense with realization. "This is what they were trying to tell us." Drex stepped forward, his hands gently brushing the symbols. "I've seen this before," he muttered. "It's not just a map, it's a warning about the Requiem, and about what happens if we don't stop it." Before Reyna could respond, a sudden roar echoed through the air, low, deep, and primal, a sound that made her blood run cold. It was coming from the direction of the ruins. A ripple of heat passed through the air and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Reyna's heart raced. Something was coming, and it was far more dangerous than anything they had imagined. The stakes had just risen exponentially. The weapon, the Requiem, was no longer just a tool of destruction. It was a harbinger, ever have anticipated. The countdown to impact was still ticking, but Reyna knew that to stop the Requiem, they first had to face the hidden truths of the planet, and the terrible secrets that lay buried beneath the ruins. The low rumble beneath. Reyna's boots grew stronger, a seismic tremor that shook the very ground they stood on. The ruins ahead began to pulse, the ancient symbols glowing brighter with each passing second, as if the planet itself was waking from a deep slumber. A tremor ran through Reyna's body, not from the physical force of the quake, but from the chilling realization that whatever was beneath the surface of Virulon had been disturbed. "What the hell is that?" Nash's voice crackled over the comms, tension thick in his tone. "I don't know," Reyna muttered, eyes still locked on the shifting ruins. The ground was vibrating in a rhythmic pattern, almost like the heartbeat of the planet. The storm had subsided, but the air was now thick with anticipation, charged with an electric energy that made every breath feel heavier. "We need to move. Now." "Commander," Drex called from ahead, his voice sharper than usual. "I found something." Reyna rushed toward him, pushing through the heavy ashen dust that had begun to settle over the land. Drex was kneeling beside the remains of what seemed to be a control panel, its surface cracked but still glowing faintly. His clawed hands carefully pried at the panel's outer casing, revealing a series of intricate wires and alien technology, unlike anything humanity had encountered. "It's not just a map, Commander. It's a lock, something buried deep beneath the surface. A security measure," Drex said, his voice tinged with both awe and fear. "And I think we've triggered it." Reyna crouched beside him, her gaze flicking over the panel. The symbols they'd seen earlier now seemed more significant than ever. Each one pulsed in time with the quake beneath them, as if the planet itself was reacting to the unlocking of this hidden mechanism. "Is there a way to shut it down?" Reyna asked, her voice tense. Drex hesitated, his eyes narrowing as he studied the alien technology. "I don't know. This is ancient, older than any technology I've seen, but if I had to guess, this is a failsafe, a way to protect whatever is down there from outsiders." "Then why the signal?" Mikhail's voice cut through the silence, his expression unreadable as he stepped closer. "If it's meant to keep people out, why broadcast the message?" Reyna's gut churned. It was a question that lingered in the back of her mind. Maybe it wasn't meant for us. The tremors intensified, and then, with a suddenness that took everyone by surprise, the ground split. A deep chasm opened beneath, the ruins revealing a massive underground structure, metallic and smooth, stretching deep into the planet's core. It was unlike anything Reyna had ever seen. A city built beneath the surface, its architecture both beautiful and terrifying. It wasn't just technology, it was alive. "We have to get inside," Reyna said, her voice firm, her decision immediate. She didn't know what they were about to find, but the very existence of this hidden city, the origins of the Virulon civilization, had to be explored. If they were going to stop the Requiem, they had to uncover the truth buried beneath the surface. The team moved quickly, scrambling over the jagged edges of the newly formed chasm. As they descended deeper into the heart of the planet, the storm outside seemed a distant memory, replaced by the eerie, still silence of the underground structure. The walls of the ancient city gleamed with an otherworldly light, as though the very stones were made of living material, their surfaces shifting and pulsing with energy. "What is this place?" Nash murmured, his voice reverberating off the walls. His hand hovered over the strange glyphs embedded in the walls, as if drawn to them by some unseen force. "It's not just a city," Drex said, his tone reverent. "It's a vault. This isn't meant to house people, it's meant to protect something." Reyna's eyes narrowed, her mind racing with possibilities. The Lunar Requiem had been triggered by a decision made by the Federation. But what if the Viralon people hadn't perished in a natural disaster, as Earth had claimed? What if they had sealed themselves away, perhaps to protect humanity from something far worse than any weapon? And if that was true, what had happened to the Requiem's creators? The very ones who had built this vault? They moved deeper, the air growing colder as they entered what appeared to be a central chamber. In the center stood an enormous pedestal, its surface covered in the same shifting symbols they had seen before. On top of it lay a crystalline orb, pulsating with a soft, eerie light. Reyna approached it slowly, her breath caught in her throat. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, the strange energy in the air heightening her senses, making her aware of every slight shift. "Pose?" Drex's voice dropped, almost reverent. "It's a consciousness, a being in some form. I've seen it before on other worlds, where advanced civilizations linked their minds to technology. It's a way of preserving knowledge, of achieving immortality." Reyna's heart pounded in her chest. The realization hit her with the force of a sledgehammer. This isn't just a weapon. This is a way to control the future. Before Drex could respond, the orb flickered and the air around them crackled with static. A sharp, almost deafening hum filled the chamber, as the ground beneath them shook once again. Reyna's pulse quickened. The weapon wasn't the only danger. This structure, this entity was alive, and it was reacting to their presence. "We need to get out of here," Nash said urgently, his voice rising in panic. Reyna held up a hand, her eyes fixed on the orb. "Wait." But before she could stop them, Mikhail moved forward, his hand brushing the surface of the pedestal. There was a flash of light, bright and blinding, and the sound of metal twisting and groaning as the walls of the chamber began to collapse in on themselves. Reyna's heart skipped a beat. "Mikhail, what the hell did you do?" Mikhail turned to her, his face as cold and unreadable as ever. But there was something in his eyes now, something darker, something far more dangerous. "I've activated it," he said, his voice eerily calm. "The Requiem is just the beginning. The Federation wants control of this power, and now they'll have it." Reyna's stomach turned as the truth crashed down on her. Mikhail wasn't just a loyal officer. He was part of something far more insidious. A secret faction within the Federation had been preparing for this moment, and they would stop at nothing to gain access to the power lying dormant in this planet's depths. The walls of the chamber continued to quake, the structure beginning to collapse as Reyna scrambled to make sense of the betrayal. They had entered the heart of an ancient civilization, hoping to uncover the truth. But now they had unleashed something far more dangerous, a power that could reshape the course of humanity. The storm outside had been nothing compared to the storm they were about to face. The moment Mikhail activated the pedestal, the underground vault erupted into chaos. The walls groaned and buckled under an unseen pressure, and the air around them crackled with an energy that sent a shockwave through the chamber. Reyna's heart raced as the reality of Mikhail's betrayal settled in. She had thought the mission was about uncovering the truth about Viralon, but now it was clear. The truth was far darker than anyone had imagined. "We need to move," Reyna shouted, her voice barely audible over the rumbling that had overtaken the chamber. The entire structure was destabilizing, the alien technology that had once been dormant, now awakening with violent force. The orb atop the pedestal pulsed, rhythmically, its light growing brighter by the second. Mikhail didn't move. His eyes were locked on the orb, his expression one of cold satisfaction. "This is it, Commander," Mikhail said, his voice calm, almost reverent. "This is what the Federation was waiting for. The power of Virulon, the power to control the future. All we had to do was unlock it." Reyna felt a sharp pang of betrayal stab through her. She had trusted Mikhail, believed in his loyalty. But he wasn't just a soldier. He was part of a shadowy faction, a faction within the Federation that sought more than just dominance in the stars. They wanted control over the future itself, and they had no qualms about sacrificing entire civilizations to achieve that goal. The ground beneath them trembled once more, and Reyna's feet slipped as the floor cracked open, revealing a massive chasm below. The storm outside had already begun to pour its violent energy into the core of the planet. Every moment they delayed, the danger increased. The very survival of everyone on this planet, human and alien alike, was now in jeopardy. Reyna's instincts kicked in. She needed to stop Mikhail, to stop the activation of the orb before the consequences became irreversible. Her mind raced through the options, her hands instinctively reaching for the emergency comms at her belt. "Drex, Nash, get to the ship, now," she commanded, her voice cutting through the panic and disarray. "We'll hold Mikhail off." "We can't just leave you here," Nash shouted back over the comms, the urgency clear in his voice. "Just go," Reyna ordered, her eyes never leaving Mikhail. "I'll handle this." For a brief moment there was hesitation. Nash had always been the pragmatic one, and Drex, for all his quiet intensity, had a sense of loyalty that was unshakable. But there was no time to waste. They knew Reyna was right. The two of them sprinted toward the ship's entrance, but as they did, the entire chamber trembled violently. A massive energy pulse surged from the orb, sending shockwaves through the walls, knocking both Drex and "Mikhail!" she screamed, pushing forward. "Shut it down!" Mikhail didn't flinch. He remained fixed on the orb, his gaze almost worshipful. "It's too late for that. The Federation will have what it wanted. All of it." Reyna's blood boiled with fury. He wasn't just a traitor to her, he was a traitor to humanity itself. But there was no time to dwell on that. She had to stop him. She lunged forward, reaching for the panel where Mikhail stood, but as her hand made contact, a surge of energy exploded outward from the orb, throwing her back violently. She hit the ground hard, her body slamming against the jagged stone of the chamber floor. Pain radiated through her limbs, but she gritted her teeth, fighting through the haze of dizziness. Mikhail's voice was distant, almost ethereal. "You don't understand, Reyna. This is bigger than you, bigger than all of us. We're on the cusp of controlling everything. The Requiem was just the beginning. This is power." Reyna pushed herself to her knees, blood trickling from her forehead, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The pain in her body was nothing compared to the pain in her heart. To see someone she had trusted so completely turn so violently toward betrayal, it made her question everything. But there was no time to question now. With every ounce of her strength, Reyna pushed herself up, charging at Mikhail with a speed, and force that surprised even her. She tackled him with a brutal force, knocking him away from the orb, her fists pounding against his chest as she struggled to regain control. "Mikhail," she screamed, "you have no idea what you're doing." He struggled beneath her, but Reyna's strength was unmatched. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every life that hung in the balance, for the future of the galaxy itself. The orb continued to pulse with dangerous energy, its hum growing louder, more insistent. Every moment was a countdown to destruction. The ship, the crew, the entire world, they were all at risk of being swallowed by the chaos Mikhail had just unleashed. With a final, desperate cry, Reyna slammed her palm against the panel, triggering a sequence of emergency shutdown protocols she had hoped never to use. The system resisted at first, but she kept her hand firmly pressed, forcing the mechanism to obey. Finally, with an explosive burst of light, the orb flickered and went dark. The energy in the room began to subside, the shaking of the ground slowly diminishing. The hum that had filled the chamber faded into nothingness. The storm outside calmed, the violent wind slowly dispersing. Reyna collapsed to the floor, her chest heaving with exhaustion. The battle was won, but it had come at a price. Mikhail was still alive, though knocked unconscious by the force of the struggle. The pedestal, the orb, and the vast structure of the city seemed to be dying, the once vibrant power draining away as the planet slowly began to stabilize. Drex and Nash arrived just as the room fell silent. Their eyes were wide with disbelief, both from the battle they had just witnessed and from the terrifying consequences of Mikhail's actions. "You did it, Commander," Drex said, his voice solemn. Reyna didn't respond immediately. She could only stare at the defeated Mikhail, her mind still reeling from the magnitude of his betrayal. The Federation had created the Requiem not to protect humanity, but to control it. And now, Reyna had stopped it. Barely. For a moment, it felt as though everything had gone still, as if the universe itself were holding its breath. But in that silence, something else emerged, something deeper. The real battle wasn't just about stopping the Requiem. It was about confronting the power that humanity wielded, and the terrifying cost of using it. Reyna had stopped the Requiem. But at what cost? The consequences of this mission would ripple across the stars, and she knew that the fight for humanity's future was far from over. Her mission had only just begun. The storm outside had passed, but the storm inside Reyna's heart was far from finished. The Federation was not the organization it had once been, and the secrets it had hidden were darker than anything she had imagined. There were forces at play far more dangerous than the Requiem, forces that, if left unchecked, could tear apart everything they had built. Reyna looked out at the barren horizon of Viralon, her mind racing. The battle had been won, but the war, this war, was just beginning. The quiet that followed was unnatural. The tremors had subsided. The chamber was still, and the pulsating orb had gone dark, its power extinguished. Reyna stood in the center of the ruined vault, the weight of the victory and the consequences settling heavily on her shoulders. Mikhail was unconscious at her feet, his betrayal clear and undeniable. The Federation's shadow loomed large over everything, its influence still pervasive despite the destruction she had just averted. But there was something else, and what now? Nash asked, his voice low. His eyes flicked between Mikhail and Reyna. "Do we take him back? Put him in front of the Federation? Let them deal with him?" Reyna didn't answer immediately. Her mind raced, parsing the events as they unfolded. Mikhail wasn't just an individual with a twisted vision. He was part of something far bigger, a faction within the Federation that had long been operating in the shadows. If she handed him over, she wouldn't just be dealing with a traitor. She'd be exposing the Federation's most dangerous secrets. "We can't take him back," Reyna finally said, her voice resolute. "At least, not in the way they want." Drex nodded in agreement, his eyes sharp and calculating. "You're right. This isn't just about stopping a weapon, it's about exposing what's been buried beneath the surface for far too long. And Mikhail is the key to unraveling it all." Reyna felt a pang of guilt, but she pushed it aside. There was no room for hesitation. The Federation had already proved it was willing to sacrifice worlds to maintain its control. It wasn't just a government. It was a machine that devoured everything in its path to fuel its insatiable hunger for power. And if she didn't act, the machine would continue to grind everything she cared about into dust. "We take him," Reyna said, her voice firm. "But not back to Earth. We take him somewhere he can't escape. Somewhere where the truth will get out." The crew moved quickly, securing Mikhail and preparing for a hasty departure from Viralon. As they boarded the Manticore, Reyna took one last look at the desolate landscape of the planet. The storm had passed, but the scars left by the Requiem were permanent. Whatever Viralon had been, it was gone now, erased by humanity's unchecked thirst for control. As the ship lifted off, Reyna turned her attention back to the task at hand. The Federation had caused irreparable damage, and she knew that this mission had only scratched the surface. The Requiem had been stopped, but that wasn't the real threat. The true danger lay in the secrets the Federation had kept hidden, and Reyna had no intention of letting them stay buried any longer. The journey back to Earth was a quiet one. The ship's hum was a constant reminder of the distance between them and everything they had left behind on Virilon. Mikhail, still unconscious, was secured in a holding cell. Reyna couldn't shake the weight of what had happened. She had stopped the Requiem, but she knew that the Federation's actions would have far-reaching consequences. The weapon might have been deactivated, but the mindset that created it was still very much alive. They arrived at the Earth's orbital station, and the crew went to work preparing for what would come next. Mikhail was taken aboard a different transport ship, one that would ensure his destination was nowhere near Earth. He would be placed in the hands of those who could see the truth without the Federation's interference. He wouldn't be allowed to escape the consequences of his actions. Reyna remained on the Manticore, watching as the familiar blue and green orb of Earth grew larger through the viewport. She couldn't shake the feeling that things would never be the same. Her life, the Federation, humanity itself, everything had changed in the span of a single mission. "We've won," Nash said quietly, breaking the silence that had settled over the ship. He was standing next to Reyna, his voice almost a whisper as he stared out into the stars. "But what now? Where do we go from here?" Reyna didn't have an answer for him, not yet. The Requiem might have been neutralized, but the greater issue was far from resolved. Humanity had teetered on the brink of a moral collapse, and she had seen firsthand how far the Federation was willing to go to protect its own power. The weapon had been a last-ditch effort, but the true battle was the fight for the soul of humanity, and that was something Reyna knew all too well. "We move forward," she said, her voice steady. "We can't undo what's been done, but we can make sure it doesn't happen again." The Federation, upon learning of the Requiem's activation and subsequent deactivation, issued a statement. Officially, it was an isolated incident, a misunderstanding. Mikhail's actions were portrayed as rogue, his betrayal something no one could have foreseen. The Federation remained intact, its power undiminished in the public eye. But Reyna knew the truth. The Federation's roots ran deep. Its corruption was ingrained in the very foundation of the organization. And as long as that system remained unchallenged, the mistakes of the past would continue to haunt the galaxy. She and her crew had been through hell to stop the Requiem, but the fight for humanity's future wasn't over. The Federation would not change overnight, and it wasn't the type of institution that could be reformed from the inside. Reyna knew this, and she knew what she had to do. She called a meeting with her crew aboard the Mant. Reyna's pulse quickened. She turned from the viewport, her instincts already on high alert. They had anticipated this. The Federation wasn't just going to let them walk away, and there were always others. More factions, more hidden agendas. "Patch it through," Reyna ordered, her voice calm but firm. She moved to the comm station, her fingers hovering over the controls. Whoever this was, they knew who she was. They knew what the Manticore was capable of. They had to. The screen flickered to life and a face appeared, a shadowy figure, their features obscured by a dark hood. Their voice was distorted, but it carried a weight of authority that made Reyna's spine stiffen. "You've done well, Commander," the figure said, their voice echoing with a cold, almost imperceptible amusement. "But this is far from over. What you've discovered on Virilon is only the tip of the iceberg. There are more devices like the Requiem scattered across the galaxy, waiting to be unlocked, and you won't be able to stop them all." Reyna's mind raced. Her fingers tightened around the console, her heart pounding in her chest. Whoever this was, they knew too much. "We're not afraid of you," Reyna said, her voice steady despite the tension building in her chest. "We'll find these devices, and we'll make sure they're neutralized. You won't control humanity's future." The figure chuckled softly, the sound sending a chill down Reyna's spine. "You misunderstand, Commander. It's not about control. It's about survival. Humanity's survival. And whether you like it or not, you're now part of something much larger. Whether you stand with us or against us doesn't matter. The truth will come to light, And when it does, the galaxy will never be the same. Before Reyna could respond, the transmission abruptly cut off, the screen going dark. She stood in silence, the weight of the words echoing in her mind. "Commander?" Nash's voice came through over the comms, concern laced in his tone. "What just happened?" Reyna took a slow breath, her fingers still gripping the console. She turned to face the crew, their eyes filled with uncertainty but also something else, determination. They had come this far. They weren't going to stop now. "We've just received an invitation," Reyna said, her voice quiet but resolute. "And it's time we answered." The manticore hummed beneath their feet as the ship moved silently through the black void of space. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and untold mysteries. But Reyna knew one thing for sure. The galaxy was about to change, and whatever came next, she would face it head-on. The battle for humanity's future had only just begun.